Oh, hi everyone, hope you're doing well. I kind of messed up the very beginning of my video, but I hope things will be fine from now on. I'm recording this a little late in the day, so apologies if the lighting is a bit weird. I like to make it a bit more luminous, but I'm afraid that if I do that, let me see. I think that if I do that, it would get kind of quickly a little blinding. So I don't know. So fun. Oh my god. Yeah, this is a bit blinding for me maybe. I don't know. Okay. Well, you have to get used to that because that's gonna stick. So I'm gonna go into town shortly enough. It's now what time is it? 4:45, I think, something like that. And I've been doing my various nerdy things. I have done my writing and my reading. I got myself a book yesterday called Martin Heidegger, Poetry, Language, Thought, a first-rate introduction. It says, a very valuable collection, review of metaphysics. So I got that in my favourite bookshop in Ireland called Hodges Figgis. It's a very nice bookshop. I was not too impressed with the prices. I thought the prices were a little dear, a little expensive, which could be, you know, could just be the case. Might have been the case forever and after, since the dawn of time, in every bookshop. Just reveals that most of the time I actually don't purchase books. I do that often when I'm like visiting a place, or when I'm like being a flaneur in you know, various parts of town. I like sort of going to bookshops, spending so much time in them that sometimes it's almost like, it feels like it's almost something I owe the bookshop to purchase a book. So I like that bookshop a lot because it's obviously part of its like business plan or whatever, but it has a lot of really comfortable couches, and it's really great a place that's not making you feel like you're in a hurry to buy a book. You can just sit down and like read for a long time. You could really literally use the bookshop as a library. Like, I don't think a lot of people do that. Some probably do. The most you know, the most opportunistic people. I'm sure like you'd end up buying a book, and you're probably more likely to end up buying a book than if you were not in this kind of comfortable mind space where you could just sit down and read for a while. So I did that, and I had a good look at this book. I mean, I've heard of this book before. It's not like one of these hastily gathered together kind of collections that sometimes, a lot of the time, philosophy books are, with regard to particular philosopher abridged versions. I mean, like Poetry, Language, Thought is a well-known kind of collection of essays that Heidegger wrote in the late 1930s about art. It just so happens that I'm working on the aesthetics sort of section of my framework at the moment of open monism, so I called it Open Aesthetics, and I figured that was literally like the only affordable Heidegger book. I mean, of course I could have bought the other ones, but that particular book seemed to like nicely blend the like the sort of accessible price. It's only 15 quid. I mean, it's not nothing, but it's fine. And the relevance of it. And you know, Heidegger is someone that some people claim is impossible to understand. I think that he's actually not that hard to understand once you unlock the way he thinks. There are controversies, I guess, about Heidegger's type. You know, like I know that there are some subscribers, some viewers that in the comments section discussed the type of Martin Heidegger. Some see him as an ISTJ, others as an INTJ. These are the two most common positions regarding Heidegger's type. the most common one seems to be ISTJ, Heidegger being a censor. People seem to agree that he uses FI and T, so TFI, but from an SI dominance perspective, and inferior NE, rather than from an NI dominant perspective with inferior SE. As for my own position on the topic, it's funny how, like, you know, it's so typical of me to be looking forward to going into town, probably having some drinks with friends and being like, I need to talk about Heidegger first, you know, I need to make a video where I talk about Heidegger, because otherwise I'm not going to have a fully satisfying day. Well, you know, I think that he's an INTJ personally. I was discussing that on Twitter with a friend recently, an INFJ colleague, who is who said something that I thought was very apt. You know, he was saying, well, maybe that's what I'm going to say now is a bastardization of what he said, but he was essentially saying, on the surface, when you look at the content of what Heidegger talks about, it has a lot to do with like getting to the core of being, returning to the earth, focusing on presence, you know, and so that could suggest SI and being very grounded, being very earthbound, but plus, you know, the fact that Heidegger defended, well, he clearly defended Nazism, at least at some points in his life, but I was going to say, like, he could be interpreted as having defended through Nazism a certain form of traditionalism, but I think actually that his ideology and his politics, if anything, were probably transformative, and he was very visionary in relation to his technology. Not that he subscribed to a party that offered the best solutions, obviously, but there's that. But also, you have to distinguish always when you consider a philosopher's type, the content, and that's another person that I know online who helped me kind of get to that vantage point, and I think it's a legitimate one, it's a good one, and it's the right one. Is to make a distinction always between what the philosopher talks about, the content, the subject matter of a philosopher, what he decides to address, and the way in which he goes about addressing it. And for Heidegger, if you look at the content, the raw content of what he talks about, that content seems to be, like I said, sensory in many ways. You know, he doesn't really talk about metaphysics. He doesn't really, he talks about metaphysics, but he doesn't really seem to have a metaphysical approach. He has an ontological approach, not really a metaphysical approach. He's not into these, you know, he doesn't really mention transcendence or any of these things. And transcendence, intuition are concepts that are often associated. But the way in which he approaches his topic, the way in which he approaches dwelling in the earth, these different concepts, the events in which he discusses the groundedness of being, they're all extremely intuitive. You know, it seems to be making heavy use of NI to be able to apprehend a pre-ontological understanding of how an event manifests itself as presence, you know, as disclosedness, the disclosedness of the event, the unconcealment of the event, the definition that he has of truth as an event, the condition of existential being in the world for human being as, you know, Dasein, as what do I want to say? Oh yeah, as thrownness. You're always in a state of being thrown into a situation, and anticipatory resoluteness towards projects that constitutively Dasein has as at the very core of its being. I mean, these concepts, the distinction between the ready to hand and the present at hand in one's relationship with the equipment in Heidegger terms, not just equipment, it's a way of relating to the world and the key to the reversal of the Cartesian cogito. I mean, these topics are very numerous, and I'm not going to go into too much detail here about them, but it seems to me to suggest a very insightful and intuitive use of introverted intuition. Well, that's a nice circular argument for you, but so maybe the contents, if you were to type the content of Heidegger's philosophy, the subject matter, maybe you could say it's an ISTJ-esque subject matter, or it has ISTJ-esque consequences, and I think even that is debatable. But certainly the way he goes about it seems to me to be an intuitive way. And not to say that that philosophers have to be intuitive, have to be n-types. A lot of philosophers, maybe the majority of well-known philosophers, seem to be n-types, but there are S-types. There are definitely S-types among philosophers. I think a lot of Stoic philosophers, and they're kind of sexy these days, which is great. I think Stoicism is a fantastic philosophical movement, and one of those philosophical movements that really offers a path towards changing one's life at a practical level, not just having like these abstract kind of connotations. A lot of Stoic philosophers, I think, were censors. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and they're very profound, you know. So again, there's no strict parallel between intuition and philosophy. Heidegger's type, however, I think much more likely to be INTJ than ISTJ. Anyway, so that was my little monologue on that particular topic. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be discussing these questions with my friends in a little while, but probably not, because they're like, Ren, just give us a break with your philosophy. Probably going to just have a whiskey or a beer or something and have a bit of fun. I'm going to be hopefully going to a place, one of my favorite bars in Ireland, in Dublin anyway, called Grogan's. I'm sure that if they're the Irish people who follow this channel and who will watch this video will be able to locate Grogan's. They serve very good Guinness. So I'm going to be at least in the South William Street area. So if there's anybody who's watching this who you know happens to be near the South William Street area, expect to find a tall silhouette of a Frenchman who's lost in Dublin. And tomorrow, I'm very happy because another friend of mine who lives in Sutton has suggested going to an electronic gig. So it's been a long time since I have attended an electronic music event, but I like my electronic music, including live, and that's going to be in a place called Tengu, Yamamori Tengu. I think Yamamori is like a Japanese restaurant, and downstairs they have like this dance floor slash bar that does a lot of like electronic events, and it's kind of a go-to place in Dublin for electronic stuff. So the DJ apparently is quite well known. I have to admit, I can't even remember his name. I'm not good with names necessarily. But I'd heard a lot about this Tengu place, never been yet. So, you know, yeah, I'm very curious to know that. So that's kind of where I plan to be from 11 onwards, 11 p.m. So that's going to be a late night. Oh my God, am I going to survive this? Well, the friend with whom I'm going, he was ISFP, I think. His name is Paul. He's a good friend. I used to live with him in Ireland back in 2011, I think. Yeah. In a part of town called Portobello, which is now like really inaccessible rent-wise because there's a real estate issue, like bubble in Dublin, so the rent is really, really high. Portobello will not be accessible anymore, except if one were like quite, earning quite a nice salary and really, really insistent upon living in that part of town. But I used to live there and share a house with a few people, including Paul, and I'm going to that gig tomorrow. Before that, I'm sure I'll be about town, but I'm not exactly sure where I'll end up. Could be Grogan's, could be a lot of other places. But I'm really looking forward to the weekends, and Thursdays are often really good mood days. So yeah, that was kind of, another episode of my little journal with like a long sort of exploration into the territory of Heidegger's type. Again, look at this beautiful book. It has a very nice cover. I was taken in by the cover. Martin, our friend Martin is there. Look at him. Look at him. Look how deep. Oh, like that's a deep thinker for you. Oh yeah, he's looking into the depth of being. This guy knows a lot about the pre-ontological conditions for the mere possibility of accessing the event that being is. On these notes, and there's a reference to Gadamer then, who is also a very interesting philosopher, but maybe I'll talk about Gadamer in another video. I hope that you enjoyed this little snippet from my life in Ireland for now, and I will see you very soon. See you soon, guys. Have a lovely day and a lovely weekend, but I'll be in touch before then. See ya.